The Fertility Podcast is here to help you understand more about your fertility, and for the last 8 years has published a lot of conversations with experts and people sharing their stories. It's now going back to its roots, giving you people's lived experiences once again to give you comfort in knowing there's a community of people who get it, so you find commonality, be inspired, and know you're not alone. Started by me, Natalie Silverman, a former patient, once I was pregnant after fertility treatment, I later joined forces with Kate Davis, an independent fertility nurse consultant, who is now your host. And here she is.
Hi, how are you? Oh, I'm actually quite pleased to sit down and have a bit of a rest because I've had a busy couple of weeks since the last episode. We've been, for the last few months, kind of juggling house renovations and work. We've had a new kitchen put in and at the moment a lovely outdoor kitchen at the end of the garden. And to be honest, I've really enjoyed it. It's been really exciting, but I am looking forward to not having to think about where plug sockets need to go. And if you've had house renovations yourself, you'll know exactly what I mean by that. And also, as well as the day job, I've been teaching a lot of yoga this last week. I've been involved in a yoga retreat, as well as teaching my normal menopause yoga class. So I have to say I'm feeling a little bit stiff in the shoulders. And before I sat down to record this today, I thought I'm just going to have a little listen back to the last episode, which was Amy talking mindfulness. And normally, to be honest, I don't listen back. I don't particularly like the sound of my own voice. But I wanted to have a listen to Amy because it's been a while since I'd heard it. And she offered up some tips on mindfulness practice. And I'm really intrigued to know, how many of you have tried it? Have you given it a go? If you haven't listened yet to that episode, do go back. You'll find it wherever you find your podcast, obviously. So go back and have a listen. And it was interesting talking to Amy and hearing about how mindfulness practice can support your fertility journey. And I always talk with my patients about having and developing a really good support strategy to help you through your fertility journey. And it's never just one thing. So mindfulness could be one of the options, but there can be other things. So you might consider acupuncture, for example, or reflexology. You might look for professional help. So it's having that strategy there in front of you that you can dip into for different times of your fertility journey. So when you need certain aspects, and I think that's really useful. And another one that I know a lot of you do or might even be thinking about doing is journaling. So journaling is another aspect of a support strategy that you could add. And it's gained kind of popularity over recent years. And actually journaling is part of the topic of this week's guest chat. We're going to be talking to the lovely Martha from Martha Brook, London. And also we're talking about her long fertility journey, but also how she used journaling as one of her support strategies. So let's get Martha in to chat. Hi, Martha. Welcome to the Fertility Podcast.
Hello. I'm absolutely delighted to be here. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Well, I have to say, I was completely gobsmacked and overwhelmed when you agreed. I couldn't believe it. I was so excited. I think I was jumping around my kitchen going, I can't believe I'm going to talk to Martha. This is amazing. So for those of you that may not have come across Martha, but however, I think a lot of people already have. Martha is from Martha Brook Stationary. I absolutely love Martha Stationary. I have been purchasing it for a long time, and I'm very lucky to have lots of gifts of Martha Stationary as well. But Martha is a self-confessed stationery addict. And to be honest, Martha, I think I completely agree with you on that one. I am a sucker for a pretty journal or a notebook. I really am. And your products are absolutely gorgeous. So before we kind of get into the nitty-gritty of why we're talking today, I'd love to hear a bit more about the origins of your business.
Oh, thank you. Well, you are too kind, but no, I really appreciate that. And it's so nice. It's so nice to be here. So my business scarily started 10 years ago this autumn, which is really quite crazy. Before then, I had a very different life. I worked for a large healthcare company, but I've always been creative. I've always been obsessed with stationery. I was that person that wanted to go back to schools just so I could go and do my annual stationery haul. And I've always had a passion for paper goods and creating things. And I hit 30 10 years ago. So I have had a milestone birthday this week, which has been interesting. And my dad became quite ill around that time. And I had this moment of thinking, life is short. You have to really follow your heart and your passions. And I'm a great believer in trying things. And if they don't work, you can try something else. And a great believer in really following your dreams. So I had quite a senior corporate job at the time, and I took a week off work. I wrote a business plan, and I came in and handed my resignation letter into what was the kind of my boss, who was the vice president of this part of the business. And I think he was slightly horrified when I told him I was starting a stationery business. But the name Martha Brook comes from my first name, Martha, combined with Brook from Brook Green in West London, which is where we were living at the time. And it deliberately sounds personal because that's what I set out to do, to create a more personal, relatable stationery brand. And anyone who follows us on our social channels will hopefully see that. A lot of our products come from my personal experiences or things that I think would really help other people. They're very much designed to empower and inspire people. They don't just look pretty, they have a purpose to them. And I really have been overwhelmed by the reaction to what we do. And it started out just being me in my bedroom, and now I have a brilliant team. A couple of years ago, we opened a studio in Australia, and we ship our stationery. I think probably we've shipped about 500,000 items of stationery now all around the world, just to give you a sense of the scale of it. Amazing. And I love it. I absolutely love what we do. And I think the thing I love most is that we really genuinely, help people, and the messages we get from our community really is the thing that keeps me going. Because as anyone knows who runs a business, it's not always easy, but it's definitely incredibly rewarding.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you. And running a business isn't easy, but like you, I'm incredibly lucky to have a rewarding business as well, and wouldn't want to do anything else. So I can completely understand that motivation. So the reason why I reached out to you is that after a long journey with IVF, you had conceived. So tell us a little bit about your story.
Yeah, thank you. So I actually do have a daughter who is coming up to being 6, and she is also an IVF baby. And then we've had a lot of difficulties trying to have a second baby, which you'll have seen, Kate. So I've had, since her 6 rounds of IVF and 4 miscarriages, and it's been, I have to say, the last few years have been really, really hard. And I've, it's not something I've shared at all publicly. It's been something that's been very private to me. And I think I decided I wanted to talk about my experience because I think that it's something that many women do go through silently without people knowing about it. And I feel incredibly lucky to have got pregnant again. And it's been very emotional because my father died in the autumn of last year. And this was our last chance at IVF. It was the 7th round overall, but 6th round trying for a second baby. And the embryo went in just the 3 days after he died. And
gosh.
And it was a very, very emotional time. And I thought, this is kind of my last chance. And for it to be the one that hung around just seems so impossible. And I really thought I was heading for a 5th miscarriage because it was looking in the early days like it was a bit small, but somehow it's hung on in there. And I don't know whether it's the spirit of my dad, but I'm now 6 months pregnant. So I feel very, very, very lucky to be at this point. And as you know, it's my journey has led to the creation of a product which I hope will help other people, which I'm sure we'll come to talk about soon. But the reason I've had to have IVF, which I didn't know for many, many years, in fact 18 years before I was diagnosed, is that I have endometriosis. So I'm sure many people who listen to this podcast will relate to this, but for a long time, probably from about the age of 13, I had extremely heavy, painful periods, to the point where they really did take over my whole life. My whole life was dictated by my monthly cycle. And, for many years I was just told, it's just you, it's just part of you need to get on with it, which I really, really feel quite angry about now when I look back and I think, God, all those years when
Absolutely. I completely agree with you. It really makes me cross that women are told to put up and shut up when it comes to...
Oh, completely.
Yeah.
Oh, completely. And I think it affects so much of your life as well. The best thing about being pregnant is I don't have periods. Yeah. And I was thinking about this the other day. I actually think I'm the best version of me now because I don't have this monthly cycle that really controls my whole life. And which is a strange thing to say, but there's probably about a week every month that I feel normal. But, so many years I struggled with this. I was severely anemic. I had a lot of pain. I had problems with my bowel. I was having colonoscopies because they couldn't work out what was wrong. And, I was off, I'd have times when, I'd have, really struggled. And I was always told that was just, I got any referral for it. I was always told that was just me. And then it wasn't until I got married to my husband in 2011, we started we always knew we wanted a family. I'm one of 4 girls. He's one of 5 boys. So we knew that we wanted a family. We always thought we wanted quite a lot of children, and we couldn't get pregnant. And then, 2 years passed, 3 years passed, and I started to think, well, maybe something's not right here. And it really wasn't, and probably until 4 or 5 years after we got married, that I finally got the referral that, was probably should have happened 18 years earlier, really, to a brilliant consultant. I have to say, I feel so lucky to have met him. He works in the NHS in fertility, and he also works privately. And he actually ended up doing all of my IVF. But initially, when I saw him, he was, did all the usual investigations, all the fallopian tubes and all your things. And I had a laparoscopy and hysteroscopy, and I was riddled with endometriosis. It wrapped around my bowel, which is what was causing me all the problems. It wrapped around one of my ovaries. I had all in my abdomen, a lot of scarring, a lot of lesions in parts of me that basically meant that it was killing off. It was killing off anything that kind of came in. It was impossible for me to conceive naturally. I mean, he managed to clear a lot of it out, but he said he and then left me for a year to see if I get pregnant. And then when I didn't, he said, I just don't think you'll ever be able to get pregnant naturally. That's just.
And what did that feel like, being told that you couldn't conceive? What did that, because that is a devastating diagnosis, isn't it? So what did that feel like?
As somebody that has, I was always, very academic at school. I went to, Cambridge University, and I've always had this mindset of, if you work hard, you can achieve something. And then to suddenly be told you can't have this thing that you've always imagined in life you'd be able to have, that is something that's so important to you. I just felt, first of all, I felt like such a failure. I know that sounds stupid, but it's something I wanted to have so much. I wanted to give to my husband so much, and to be told that it's something I couldn't do, I felt like I was less of a person. Then I also just felt like I had this grief in my chest that I couldn't really explain. And it was like my chest felt like it was like I was carrying this weight of not being able to do this thing that was so important. And I think the thing I found really hard was that nobody else really got it. I think one of the hardest things about having fertility struggles is that people who are able to conceive, very easily, really have no concept of how difficult it is, and how much it can affect your whole being, and how often, it's all you can think about, when you're told you can't have children, when you're going through IVF, you see pregnant people everywhere, you see baby stuff everywhere, and you get baby announcements on social media, and it's so hard.
Yeah.
And I think it's impossible to explain to someone that's not been through it, just how much it hurts. And it is not that you're not pleased for other people. Of course you are, you're delighted for them, but how difficult it is to kind of carry that with you. And
yeah.
I think as a woman, it's such a part of who you imagine you'll be. That's, why we are women, to be able to conceive and give birth. And yeah, it's something that is really, really difficult, I think, for anyone to go through.
Yeah, it is. And I guess with that as well, with dealing with all of that emotion of trying to conceive, other family members, friends conceiving, going through treatment, as well as doing all of that, you're building this business. How did you find that? Because I do a lot of work within the industry and within corporate organisations, supporting organisations when they are to support their employees better on a fertility journey. This is your own business. So it was you. You are your business. So how did you juggle that?
It is a really good question, because I think if I was in my old life, in my corporate job, I don't know how the last few years would have gone. I genuinely don't know how the company I work for would have reacted to it. Because as anybody knows who's have to go through fertility investigations or through IVF, it's so time consuming, and emotionally and physically, you do need quite a lot of, support from those around you. I feel very lucky that I do have my own business. In some ways it's harder because I have to show up. Nothing happens, without me in a way. I know I can't just put my out of office on and disappear. But in some ways it's been a good thing, because I made the decision that I was going to be very honest with my team and very honest about everything that was happening. Every time I started around, I told them, I explained what was happening. I've been able to have work flexibly. So if I need to go for a scan, a lot of scans, a lot of bloods, I'm able to take that time out and pick the hours up if I need to. So in some ways, I think it's been quite good, because it's basically meant that I've had the flexibility to work the hours that I need to work, but also manage the fertility processes. But in some ways, yes, it has been harder, because for the miscarriages, some of the miscarriages I had were awful, and I would have, made my team member have 1 to 2 weeks off. I would not have wanted them to come in, but I felt I had to be back at work, so I'd be having a general anaesthetic, and then I'd be working.
So it's that real difficult balance, isn't it? But I completely understand that, because I know if I'm ill, everything stops. It's so difficult.
I think I got into the mindset of, because I've done it so many times, it sounds terrible. I almost had to just get on with it. But I was very honest. I did take the time where I needed to take the time out. Some of the miscarriages were worse than others, but if I needed the time, I needed the time, and I did. I did say that I did have time out.
And have you found the benefit of being honest with your team? Because
hugely.
If you're sharing what has gone on with you, then presumably they will feel more confident to share what life event might be going on with them. Because let's not forget, it doesn't have to be fertility. It could be caring for a family member. There's so many other life events that occur in our life, depending on the age that you are, that can impact on your ability to show up at work, to be yourself at work, to be productive, impact on retention. So how, have you found the benefit of being honest as the leader, and what that has had to your team?
I think definitely when I did my old job, when I started my career many years ago now, it was very much put in a brave face, get on with it. You don't share personal stuff. But what I've found is that it gives people a different side to you as a leader. They see you're a real person. Everyone has got stuff. Everyone's got stuff. Everyone's got things going on in their life. I'm quite an emotional person as well. If I need to cry, I will cry in front of people. I'm not ashamed to do that. And it has definitely been moments where I've cried in front of my team, because it's been a lot. And my dad being so ill at the same time was really hard. But it has meant that people have been more forthcoming within my team about things that are going on in their lives, and that might be mental health things, or it might be physical things, or it might be stuff that's going on with their family. And actually I did have a team member, after I'd been through some of this, go through IVF themselves and actually go through it at the same clinic as me. And my approach to that was wildly different than if I hadn't been through it myself. I was able to, I knew what that individual needed emotionally. From a time perspective, I wanted them to have as much time as they needed, much time as they needed for the appointments. We actually didn't have a maternity policy at that point. So we had a really good maternity policy that we put in place, which involves full pay and as much time as you need for fertility appointments and things like that I wouldn't really have had the awareness or understanding to do. And I think for the people that are going through it, it does make a real difference, because ultimately it doesn't affect your ability to want to work or show up or contribute. It's just something that you're having to carry and go through, and you just need the support. That's really the thing. You just need somebody to get it. And
you're absolutely right. And all the kind of evidence and research that has been done into fertility in the workplace really indicates that the line manager is crucial. So your line manager or employer is the pivotal person. So if they are supportive, then that makes such a difference to your overall fertility journey and your overall emotional health during that fertility journey. That's the evidence. So we can't argue with that. That's there. So it's fantastic that you've been able to share your experiences for the benefit of your team, whether it be fertility or mental health issues. That's amazing. As a result of your journey, and you alluded to at the beginning of the podcast, you've developed a beautiful IVF journal, I hear.
I have, yeah. So I think one of the things for me, I don't know about other people who've been through this, but I found IVF so overwhelming at times, and I think that's partly the hormones. That's partly how much information you've got to take on board. I think it's just the process of, knowing what's happening and the hope you're carrying, and then going through it all. And the thing that really, really helped me was writing stuff down. And I'd have days where I just felt really overwhelmed. I just needed to write down how I was feeling, or just writing down what I needed to remember to inject myself with, when all the appointments were. Stupid things like I just would forget what side of my body I'd done certain injections, and then you've got to do, there was so much to take on board. And what I found with the IVF is that you have your kind of coordination appointment, you're booking an appointment, and they tell you all this stuff, and then they expect you just to go away and remember it all. And no one phones you up and says, "Oh, hey, how are you getting on? Are you remembering to put this one in the fridge?" You're like, no one tells you. They just sort of expect you to do it.
Yeah.
So I had various notebooks and things, lying around where I'd scribbled stuff down, and I started to do a bit of, regular journaling, and the bits that were hard, the 2-week wait and the run up to the scans. I was writing stuff down because I needed just to process how I was feeling. And when I knew that I wanted to create something that would help other people, but I have to say I was not in the place to be able to do it. It was only once I had reached this pregnancy and I got into the second trimester where I thought, gosh, this might be happening, that I was able actually to be in a mental state to think, right, I want to put all this together now and create something for other people, because I found it too hard to do before then. But so the start of this year, started to work on it. I had a look in the market, and there just wasn't really anything that I would want to buy that really fulfilled what I was trying to create. And so what it is, it's called the IVF journal. It's personalized, so you can add someone's name onto it or a couple's names. It works so so you can give it to somebody as a gift if you know that they're going through this, or you can buy it for yourself. It works whether you're going through it alone, so if you're doing it with a sperm donor, or you're going through it with a partner. And it's really designed to be there every step of the way. It's got lots of practical stuff in for every step of the IVF process. And it's also really importantly got stuff in to help you look after yourself. So
amazing.
It doesn't give you the protocols. You have to fill your own protocol in, your own medicines in, but it's got the framework for you to be able to do that. And the bit that we do give people is some tips to look after themselves, and a really nice framework to be able to write how you're feeling at certain steps, to make sure you are looking after yourself. So I think that was the thing that I found was you really do need to take care, because it's a lot, and it's silly things that I only found out once I'd gone through several rounds, like drinking water makes such a big difference to the outcome. Making sure you're eating enough protein, getting enough sleep, all these things, they're small things, but they do really affect the outcome. And just making sure that you create the space to look after yourself. And it's just a beautiful product, first of all, and it's just really helpful. And this sounds so stupid, but when we finished mapping it out, and there's a girl on my team that helped me kind of work out all the different steps I wanted to put in, I looked at it and I burst into tears. And I said, this would have helped me so much.
Yeah,
it's just such a lovely product. And there's at the start, there's an introduction from me, and there's a little note from me at the end as well, which hopefully will help people as well. But I've been really blown away. We only launched it 2 weeks ago by messages from people. I've been blown away by the number of people that have bought it, which I really wasn't expecting. And people saying how much it's going to help them. And also what I have been really surprised by is the number of people that have come forward privately and shared their own stories with me. They haven't really felt that able to do that before. And I've actually been really humbled to speak to a lot of people who are on this journey as well. And it's only really clarified what I thought, which is that so many women just go through this and don't talk about it. So it's designed to be there for you every step of the way. If you don't have someone to talk to, or even if you do have someone to talk to, it help you process the roller coaster of emotions and things you go on through the process.
Amazing. It sounds like a fantastic resource, and I will put all the links in the show notes.
Oh, thank you, Kate. That's really kind.
People can find it. And, please do go and check out Martha's beautiful Instagram. You can also find Martha clearly on online, and again, we'll make sure I put all the links onto that as well, so that you can go and look at the beautiful stationery. And if you're not a stationery addict yet, you will be by the time you finish perusing the website, because it's so stunning.
You're so kind. Thank you so much.
No, I genuinely mean it. But Martha, thank you so much for being open to coming onto the podcast, explaining your story, and telling us about the IVF journal. I absolutely know it's going to be an amazing resource for people. So thank you so much.
It's an absolute pleasure. Thank you for inviting me. And if anybody has any questions at all, do always feel free to send a DM on Instagram. I'm always happy to chat.
Well, I have to confess, I was proper girl fanning there. I absolutely love everything about Martha Stationary, as I kept saying. It's so lovely. So please do go and check it out if you're a bit of a journal and notebook sucker like me. It's absolutely glorious. But what an amazing resource she's developed. I really like the fact that it's a mix of somewhere that you can perhaps write down your thoughts and feelings, as well as really being somewhere that you can get practical tips from as well. I really like that mix, and I can see it being a fantastic blend of support. So I'm really hoping that if you're going through an IVF journey, that you will find that that's an added resource that you can add. And I always talk about having a bucket full of different types of support networks or support avenues or resources that you can just dip into when you need to, and it's your kind of like support strategy. There has to be lots and lots of different things in your support strategy. So you can't just rely on your partner. You need to have maybe friends, family, other members, potentially professional support, resources that you can really tap into, because your needs are different at different times, whether it's different aspects of your fertility journey, going through treatment, perhaps trying naturally, whatever it might be, but also your different emotional states. So I'm really hoping that you'll find this resource a really added extra to anything else that you're doing. And like I said, it's all the details are going to be in the show notes, so do check it out. Anyway, thank you for listening, and we'll be back again in 2 weeks. Bye for now.
Please do rate and review the podcast, as it's brilliant for other people to know what you think. Even just hitting follow or subscribe wherever you're listening to this podcast really helps other people know it's worth a listen. Also follow Kate on her Insta, which is Your Fertility Nurse. And if you'd like to book in a consultation with Kate to understand more about your fertility and reproductive health, visit yourfertilityjourney.com.